Hello, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host of Fiberchats. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Love having you here. Consider subscribing. Check out my previous videos. And if you are already a subscriber, welcome back. Today, my guest is Lily from Lily Knits In Cumbria. Welcome.
Hello. Lovely to meet you finally. It's been
Yeah.
it's been such a long time, hasn't it?
I know we've talked for so long, but we've never actually seen each other live. So that's
No, we haven't. We haven't. So it's a very exciting day, and I look forward to having a fiber chat with you. I've watched lots of the ones you've already done, so I've got an idea of
thank you.
what's coming up, and I've enjoyed them. It's been great finding out about so many different people.
Right. Well, let's start with your designs because you're doing in knitwear designs
Yeah.
and you started it pretty recently, right? It's not something you've
Yeah.
been doing for too long.
Well,
How?
we were living in France. We lived there 16 years, and we actually I stopped work just before COVID started, and so I gone from working 60 hours a week to just being at home with my garden, and I was going a bit insane. My husband said, "You're going to have to find something to do because I'm a woman who has to have a project. I can't just go on holiday and do keep fit and walk the dog. That's not my thing." So I'd always knitted since I was really tiny. So I thought, I'll have a look at knitwear design. So I discovered Instagram about this time because I'd never done Instagram before. And I was flicking through and there was a picture posted by a Russian lady. And it was this hat. And it was full of these wonderful organic fluid shapes. I thought, how did she do that? This is so exciting. Because I'll tell you how knitting used to be when I started knitting. And so I wrote to this Russian lady and she said, no, it's not me. It's woolly wormhead. And it was the toff hat. So I learned German short rows and I learned Kitchener stitch. And it was like, wow, this is amazing. So I thought I'll have a go at knitwear design because I'm always rather alarmingly ambitious for people who know me. I always some people have trouble with self-doubt. I have the opposite problem. I'm always convinced I'm going to be absolutely wonderful at things, and I spend years battling being annoyed with myself. So I had a look and I found a course by Aroha Knits called Swatch Studio, which basically takes you from your idea to pressing publish.
Mhm.
And the good thing is about that lady is the course is quite expensive, but she does give discounts for people who are less able to pay the full fee, and you can do it in sections. So I did that for about 4 months and then I just jumped in.
It's interesting that, like you said, that you knitted as a child, but then
Yeah.
you learned the German short rows and Kitchener stitch like in the later years. Like, do you find that this is how you love that knitting is something that you can learn like all your life? It's sort of
Oh, absolutely. There is always something to learn. Like I've learned that I can't do brioche. I'm great.
yeah.
You did brioche in the round. I mean, kudos. So brioche for me is not how it's going to go wrong. It's when it's going to go wrong and how much I'm going to hate it. I think you can, because when I started, I I was I was a single child, an only child, and we lived in rural Lancashire. And so when I'd read the contents of the children's local library, my mum decided that she'd teach me to knit. So I was about 7 at the time. And so she had these really long metal needles that, they're not exactly easy for little hands to get hold of. And it was additionally complicated by the fact that my dad used to use them to fix the telly. You may not have known this, but back in the 60s, tellies had the picture had an alarming tendency to roll. So when it did, Dad would leap up it and grasp one of these mutilated knitting needles and poke it in the back like a sort of mechanical acupuncture. So I would learn on contorted needles, and So I did that, and I made things for my dolls. And so it was my dolls were avant-garde. They had ripped and pulled clothing. They were Vivienne Westwood before Vivienne Westwood was Vivienne Westwood.
Right. Was your
Yeah.
mom knitting like what kind of things was she knitting?
Oh, she tended to knit. Oh, she did jumpers for me and her. She tended to do matching jumpers. And then my uncle Alf liked socks. So this is probably where I got my passionate hatred of the double-pointed needles, because he would ask her to knit socks in what was called sensible colours, which is sort of a colour you could have no joy working with. It was sort of like old pub ceiling or rotting swamp, you know.
Right.
So yeah, she'd knit those, and she'd knit jumpers. But when I started, I couldn't knit jumpers, of course, because I
Right.
was only little. So I had a look at some of her magazines, and she used to get Woman's World and Woman's Weekly. And in it, there'd be a lady in a very, very fine, like 2-ply, which would have taken forever to knit. And there'd be a man in a cable thing smoking a pipe. And then there'd be dolls' clothes. So I used to have a go at these dolls' clothes. And so we go to the knitting shop, and knitting shops were a bit different back then, sort of it. And they always had net curtains. And you go in, and there'd be a bell on the door, and then this very ancient woman, who's probably younger than us, would come out of the gloom and say, "What do you want?" And there was only a choice of acrylic
Right.
or sock yarn, and that was it. So I had many years of sock yarn, and then I went to uni, and I sort of lost it for a while. But then when I got married and I had kids, I sort of picked it up again, and I knitted for the babies, which was quite good because that grew
Right.
quite fast.
Right.
And then I was an accountant, and I sort of did a jumper a year. They never fitted because I always knitted them in front of the TV, and I'd never heard of circular needles. That was mind blowing when I discovered circular needles. So I tended to have one arm like that and another arm sort of like that.
You mentioned also your grandmother to me one time, and you told me this very interesting story about her
Yeah.
eloping from the
I know
very
it was my great grandmother actually.
right.
Well, this is a family history story. I've not yet checked it out, but it's all very Downton Abbey, because I don't know whether you watched Downton Abbey, but there was one of the daughters who eloped
Right.
with one of the, I think he was a coachman, wasn't he?
Chauffeur, yeah.
And because it's TV, he was received into the family. Well, when my great grandmother eloped with a coachman from, I don't think they were as wealthy as the Downton Abbey lot, but they did have a big house and race horses, and were in Debrett's peerage. And she ran off with a coachman, and she was promptly cut out of the will altogether. And she went and lived in a tiny cottage with 3 rooms on top of a hill in Shropshire, which is county next to Wales in the UK, and had 10 children, one of whom was my grandmother. And it was a family tradition to make things. They all sewed, they all knitted, they could all probably sew in a straight line and cut in a straight line, which is something I can't do. I'm obviously deviant in that part. But my cousin and my aunties, they're all really good at sewing, and they tried to teach me quilting, it wasn't good. It's one of the many things I discovered I wasn't good at.
Do you feel like you inherited your great grandma's spirit, rebellious spirit?
Oh, actually, I do. As mum always liked staying in the same place. She didn't like moving. She didn't like things that were different. And Dad didn't either. But I've always had this sort of wanderlust, to go places and to see things. And yeah, so when my husband was made redundant back in, 2004, the boys were 12 and 14 at the time, so we decided we'd go and try something different. And we went to France for 16 years, and it was, as you know, going to another country where you don't speak the language and you don't know how things work, it is really hard, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And
It's
you spend
challenging.
years being very confused and tired. I wanted to
So
go in a
how
room.
did you manage with French?
I think I must have spoken it in a previous life, because I was 46 when we went and I didn't know any French. And within a year, I was fluent. It was like it was already there, and it was just like retuning a radio to find it again.
Interesting.
But I think that either people are good at languages or they're not. I think it's the way your brain's wired, really. And if you're good at languages, then you will acquire them.
Right.
Yeah. How hard did you find it learning English, or did you speak English?
No, I didn't. When I came to the US, the only thing I could say is my name is Irina and I'm 23 years old, and that was about it.
Yeah.
So it was all new, and I lived with an American roommate. And I remember by the end of the day, I would be so tired that I would just start speaking
It's
Russian to her.
exhausting. It's exhausting. And you have to learn how to listen.
Right.
Really,
And I
really
think like
listen.
what helped me a lot, I mean, besides the fact that I was submerged in this environment and I didn't know any Russian people, so it was like I had to learn the language
Yeah.
basically, but sitcoms. I was
Oh, really?
learning English from Saved by the Bell and the Prince of Bel-Air. Like that
Oh,
was my
it's a good thing you weren't watching the Carry On films. You may have been saying very unsuitable.
right. So I knew all the slang before I
Yeah.
knew the proper English, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, I picked up my French from the people I work with, because we went there with the idea of all British people have when they go to a European country, is to run holiday accommodation. So we got there, and the French have a reputation for bureaucracy, which is well merited, I have to say. So after about 6 months of ploughing through the bureaucracy and not knowing what we didn't know, and only finding out later on, we discovered it was going to cost us about 400,000 to renovate our barn, and we thought we'll never get that back.
Right.
So about the same time, there was a boom in English-speaking people wanting to come and buy in France. So we went to Century 21 and were introduced by an insurance agent who was bilingual, and we started, and it was exhausting, because you'd go there, you'd understand nothing, you'd write down lots of words that you weren't quite sure what they meant and look them up when you go home. And the boys had to start school, and I was sleeping 13 hours a night, because it is very tiring.
Right.
Complete immersion, isn't it?
Yeah. Did you, during that time in France, did you knit a lot? Did you continue with your jumper knitting and like socks, whatever? Like what was going on at that time? Or were you tired?
What I used to do is I used to buy a lot of yarn, and I got an awful lot of yarn and material. I used to buy craft stuff and then stroke it and rearrange it. But to design, you need to have headspace, and you need to clear your head and put aside to actually feel the yarn. And my design starts from the actual material. So if I'm feeling exhausted, I can't feel what the material is saying to me. You had Katie, the yarn whisperer, on, and I feel that the yarn does speak to me, and it tells me what it wants to be, and that's where I go from. So consequently, for at least 15 years, I knitted jumpers with strange sort of length arms, because that's all I have the energy to do. But once I did actually have the time, I was into it, and I get up at 6 and I knit for 2 to 3 hours, and I knit a little bit in the afternoon, and I knit in the evening. Well, you know what it's like when you're into a project, you sort of get stuck in, don't you?
When you started designing, talk about like did your real estate skills came into play with all the marketing of your designs? Like, did you feel like you knew how to promote your designs, how to make a name for yourself?
I did find it, the photography, and that really helped in taking good images, because I knew what a good composition was and good lighting. So that helped, and also writing copy, writing what's called the story behind the design. That I found really easy. What I found very tricky is the grading. So I have actually moved away from grading now, and what I'm trying to do in my latest designs is something which is completely customizable. So because there's a tyranny about grading that I absolutely hate, and it's terribly expensive as well. Because as a new designer, it could take quite a long time to get your the money back.
Right.
So this is sort of based on, you knit a gauge swatch, and it's on that gauge swatch I give you instructions how to make a garment that will actually fit you.
Oh, that's
So I've got a set called the Ultimate Lounging Set, and the shorts are in testing. And basically, I've got people in the over 40-inch hips range, and I've got people knitting for their great grandchildren. So that there's this amazing range of stuff that's coming out, and it's always really good seeing what the testers do with something.
Right. What in your mind makes somebody a good tester?
I would say somebody who is conscientious, because you do need somebody who's going to complete in time, and also somebody who's not frightened of criticizing the design or saying where it could be improved. Because what every designer really needs is feedback. Probably not everybody's good at taking it, but that's what you really need. Also, if a tester's good, they will they will see it from their own perspective and give you exactly what they would need. So if every tester gives you exactly what they need, you can see the range of incomprehension that your design has created. Because I'm writing a design that, a pattern that I think is very clear, but it's not clear to everybody. So what I started doing actually is video support, because I'm very visual and a lot of people are visual. And also I always do charted and written, because some people can't do charts. I can't do written. It just sort of floats around. Are you charted or written?
I'm mostly charted. Like I prefer,
Yeah.
I mean, especially when it comes to lace, I can't even start dealing with the written instructions. There's one designer that I had trouble with the charted instructions. I don't know why, it was just confusing me, and I was following her written instructions. But like in general, when I do the lace, it's always charts.
Yeah. And also, when I first got into knitting a couple of years ago, I'd never heard of stitch markers, and how good are stitch markers, honestly, especially when you've got chunks of pattern. They really help just to just to do that.
Well, let's talk about stitch markers. So at some point,
yes.
you opened the fabulous stitch markers.
I did.
So how do you pick those markers? How do you think, like, how do you decide which ones you're gonna sell?
I just sort of see which ones, I tend to go for ones that are quite fun and shiny, because I do like a bit of bling. It's my bling ring. How blinky that is.
That's beautiful.
Yes, I like a bit of bling, and I also like stitch markers that open, because then you can move them around. So I tend to like animals and insects, and shiny things, really. And they're really good because you can send them out all over the world. People don't end up paying customs and VAT on them, because quite often if you send out something that's quite heavy or expensive, then the customs and VAT is actually quite expensive when it arrives in the country, particularly from the US. And then it gets held up in customs, and there's VAT on it. So, that makes it more expensive for people. And I tend to do free postage, because the people want to pay for the thing and not for the delivery, really, don't they?
Right. Well, I love your little bee stitch markers, because they're just so adorable, and everybody who I was showing it to was like gasping and like, oh my God, I need one of those. So I think those are like super popular.
Yes, yeah. Oh, my llamas have
The
been,
llamas are adorable, yeah.
yeah, they've been the most, some of the most popular. There's those and the bees and the little shops.
Actually, you know what else I like? The shopping bags and the shoes with high heels. Like
Oh,
those
do
are
I
like
thought
all
those shoes would be your thing. You look like a bling shoe lady, I
right,
have to
right.
say.
Why did you decide? So you have an account on Instagram called Lily Knits in Cumbria,
Mhm.
and then you have a separate account for fabulous stitch markers.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to have like separate accounts for it?
Well, I don't know. I think I might have started the stitch markers first. And at the time, I was trying to concentrate on, because when you listen to Instagram gurus, they say you got to be focused and you just got to do one thing. So I thought I'll keep it separate. And I did that. I'm wondering now if I shouldn't have just amalgamated them, really, because it isn't growing. The fabulous stitch markers, or mainly because they've all been in the lockup. I've just actually released
Right.
those and all my French vintage buttons. So watch this space, because when I was in France, I used to go to brocante, which are like sort of like flea markets,
Right.
and you can get big bags of clothing, and the clothing itself is really horrible, like bizarre aprons that people wear in 1950s film, but they will have the most beautiful buttons.
Right.
So I used to chop all the buttons off and make the like t-shirt material, and make rugs out of those. But I've got a huge collection of French vintage buttons which have been locked away. Well, there is actually a program called Behind the Scenes in the Museum, and it's the Victoria and Albert Museum, named after Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. And it goes into the preservation of costume and works of art. And I find that absolutely fascinating. To actually touch something from history is amazing. That the creepiest experience I had in my 16 years is I sold the house of a German diplomat, and he lived in America and he was quite ill, and so he said to me, "I'll send over my friend. Between you, decide what's important and send it back to me." And there was 30 years worth of stuff in this house. So this guy came over, and we started, and it took weeks. And I found a little box, and in it was a document signed by Hitler
Oh my
from
God.
1943. And I thought, I am holding up in my hand something signed by that man, and it was like time stood still. And that is the power
Right.
of a historical item. Yeah, so that went back to Emmanuel. I didn't feel but on a more positive note, there's a place called the Bowes Museum in Barnard Castle, which is County Durham in the northeast of the UK, and we went there. I got some pictures on my Instagram, and they have a costume collection. Oh my goodness, all the embroidery and
I
the
looked at
shoes.
them. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, and there's a waistcoat which is blue with like a pink rose on it. But if you actually zoom in, there's little scallops, and in every scallop there's an individual embroidery, and it's just
Unbelievable.
stunning, absolutely stunning. And they're so tiny. Oh
Right.
my goodness, the waists were like this. They're literally 16-inch waists. You wouldn't get a 10-year-old that size these days.
Right.
And they must have been about 4 foot 10 tall and have about size 3 feet. And we
It's
did
funny
actually go
because
to, yeah, we went to the Bronte parsonage years ago with the Charlotte and Anne, and Emily Bronte lived, and they were tiny. They were about a UK size 8, which should probably be like a 4 in American.
right.
Tiny, tiny people.
Yeah. It's
Mm.
interesting. Like right before COVID, I went to London with my family and we went to the tower. And they have this, they have a room where there is Henry VIII's armor for when
Mm.
he was young, before he became king, or like
Yeah.
right when he became king, and then his later years. And you can see the difference in
He
size.
expanded.
He
He
grew.
expanded, didn't he? Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
definitely grew. How do you find the inspirations for your designs? Like, where do you find them?
Well, sometimes I can. It's all image led, really. So the design I'm just doing at the moment, which I've gone and left downstairs, which is quite annoying. It was based. We were at the seaside, and there were rock pools, and the the waves were breaking, so you could see the foam and you could see the granite within the rock pools, and then there were bubbles behind. And that image stayed with me. So Ronnie, who's our wonderful friend from Inspired Fiberworks, sent me some Chesapeake, which I know you love.
I love that color.
It's a really good colour. It's the colour that El Greco used in a lot of his art. I realised that. We were also at the Bows where they had an El Greco. And I thought, I can do this. And I'd done my first yarn show ever this year. And while I was there, a lady was talking about sequence knitting, which is really a really interesting concept and very simple. So basically you will do a sequence like knit 4, purl 4, knit 2, purl 2, but you'll do it on an uneven number of stitches. So every time you go around, you repeat the sequence and it moves along. So this actually gives really, quite interesting patterns, and it's sort of like rib, but much more interesting than rib, and it goes sideways. So on this design I've just done, you've got that, and that represents the granite pool. And then I had some natural colour yarn from blue-faced Leicester sheep in the UK. So that is fuzzy, because the Chesapeake is, with it being silk sport, is it's a high twist, isn't it? You can't pull it to bits. Whereas the other one is fuzzy. So that represents the garter stitch foam. And I've got bubbles underneath. And I've just run out of Chesapeake, and I'm really hoping it's going to arrive before we go on our road trip, because I want to do it. I want to get it finished. But this one here is, Flossie's rather tall, isn't she? Let's put her forward. Can we put her back a bit? So this one here, I'm very fond. Another technique I really like are twisted stitches.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of using cable needles, I've got little twisted stitches here and then twists here. Because I like things that look pretty and a bit different, but I don't want to spend forever doing them. I hate things that are really fiddly.
Right.
So what I like to do in my patterns is gently stretch people's skills without scaring them.
Right.
And when they finish a design, they feel, that they've learned something and they have something pretty to wear.
Let's talk about your fan base, people who knit your designs, people who test for you. How did you find them? Where did they come from?
Well, I tend to use Yarn Pond, which is, where you can get testers. And I've been very lucky. I found a lady called Marisa, who's Crafty Stitch Witch, and she started testing for me, right back at the beginning. And she's stuck with me. I tend to have a few faithfuls, and I recently picked up Donna, I think she lives in Texas, and she's brilliant because she can do my tiny sizes, and she's terrifically enthusiastic, always completes on time. But both her and Marisa, they take really good pictures, and they're very conscientious feedback. But every time I seem to get a new mix of people, and we're like a little family when we're testing. You all know this from the Dream Team, won't you? You're a sort of a family while you're testing.
Right.
And just occasionally I do testing myself. This is another technique. I do love a new technique. And this one here is called number knitting. So basically, they're all mitered squares and triangles.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and so you do a triangle and then you join on another triangle and it sort of goes around the corners.
Right.
So that was quite an interesting technique. So I did that. Yeah. But
well, talking about like family feeling with your testers, you started the loop on Instagram for yarn lovers.
I did.
How did that idea came to you? Like, what made you decide to try it?
Well, at the beginning, I was the Cumbrian knitter before Instagram decided to close me down. That warning, I lost 6,000 followers. So I was concentrating on building followers, and what I hadn't quite grasped back then is you need to get relevant followers. There's no point in joining massive loops and just getting random people who are not actually into what you do, because I think actually you get penalized by Instagram for doing that.
Right.
And what you need are people who are actually into what you do. So I joined a few loops and I picked up a number of people, but they weren't really into what I did. And after a while, they started dropping off. So I thought, I'll give it a go, and I'll just start. And how people, they absolutely, they flowed in. And it was a bit of a revelation, really. And what I feel is the most important thing in the loop is to have people who are, who are committed to supporting one another. I don't just want people who come along and just join in and then don't interact with the other people. So people support one another, and I have various chat groups on the loop. People can post about their they put 3 emojis when they got a new post, and then people go along and like it and comment it. So it's really good for engagement. And if they've got a question, they can ask a question if they need support. If they're having a really rubbish time, there's one poor lady whose house went up in flames.
Wow.
And she felt that that she felt it was secure enough to share that with the people in there. But what has surprised me is Yarn Lovers Loop is predominantly crochet people. And I was amazed how many people come to crochet as therapy through bereavement or stress. And picking up a hook and yarn, it's brought them solace and comfort. Right. In a way, rather more than knitting, I think. Nobody's ever said that about knitting, but the crochet community is, I think it tends to be younger people, like 40. I think the knitters tend to be over 40 and the crocheters tend to be under 40. But I do have everyone from some 13-year-old twins in Thessalonica in Greece to 70-year-olds. And they all, they all mush in together, and everybody really enjoys the experience, I think. So it's been very
also
rewarding.
like a sort of like a common language, because
yeah,
like I was talking to Ronnie about it one time. She was saying how like she wished she understood what that person was saying, and I said, well, you sort of don't have to, because it's like art. It's like international language that everybody gets. Like this is what unites us: the love of yarn and the love of creation.
Yeah. And also we've got quite a few indie dyers in there as well. Like Katie and like Ronnie, and so obviously it's and Kerno Designs as well, and it's a really good outlet for them, because I like supporting small business. If I'm going to be buying yarn, I want to know the person who's producing it. Right. So there's 2 local yarn shops actually in Lancaster, which is a town near us. So I go into those, and I'm going to be doing some trunk shows, which is tremendously exciting, because I've never done that before. And also I'm looking to teach. And I'm going to teach on a pay what you can basis, because I've found local authorities used to have a lot of courses, and the funding's just been taken away. And if I can find somewhere like a local library or a town hall and have about 10 people, and people can pay what they want to pay, then if somebody does need comfort or need a space or need something that will take them out of themselves, then they will be able to afford to do it. Because I'm fortunate enough to have be comfortably well off and have a good husband and a comfortable home, but not everyone is like that, and I'd like to bring that to people. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm also going to be doing a bit of volunteering in crafternoons in the local town hall. So because I've never actually taught before, so I thought before I start getting people to pay, I'll go and have a go and see what see what teaching is actually involved.
I'm very curious to see what you're gonna think about it and hear your
Yeah,
feedback on how.
I'm. Well, I don't. I just hope not too many left-handed people turn up. That's like my ultimate nightmare. Is I'm
It's
trying to.
funny because like somehow like everybody I talk to is a left-handed knitter. Like I learned about so many left-handed knitters that I personally know that it's like insane. Like I
Really?
never
Do,
really.
do they knit right hand or do they knit left
No,
hand?
no, like grandma, he who I interviewed, he's a left-handed knitter and he just changes the direction of everything. So he has the whole system. Then there is
Right.
this Russian guy that I'm good friends with, and he also does the left-handed. And I actually connected them and they talk to each other about it through Google Translate,
Yeah.
sharing their techniques. And then Julie Knits in Paris, her husband, Wonder Hobby Knits.
Yeah.
He's a left-handed knitter, and I just like every time I talk to somebody, I'm realizing that they're left-handed knitters. So it's
Yeah.
somehow like not as rare as it seems.
No. Well, what was interesting, for some reason unknown to myself, I was a chartered accountant for a while. That's something I was exceptionally bad at, and I found that maths and music goes together, and I think there's 11% normally of the population are left-handed, but in my accountancy classes there was like 50%,
Right.
and oh dear, it was a bad choice. I don't know why I thought that. Yeah, it was the 80s. And everyone was a yuppie and did maths, and I can't do maths. And nobody said don't do it. Yeah, they should have said don't do it. But I
Well,
did
do you
it.
find it difficult with your designs that math is not your favorite subject?
No, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. Particularly as the design course now, you're supposed to design up to a 65-inch bust. I can't do that, which is why I've gone into this new thing of just customizing.
Right.
And you do your gauge swatch, and then you sort of figure it out from there. It does put more responsibility on the knitter, so it's probably not for a complete beginner. But the people, who are testing for me, I probably got 8 on the shorts and 9 on the top. They're all for it. They're getting stuck in, and they're really enjoying it.
Right.
So
I saw
yeah,
that you just recently published the cowl, the
yeah.
Windows.
Oh, a window on the lake. Yes,
Windows on
that's
the
the
lake.
Blackwell Arts and Crafts House. Yeah.
How did the inspiration for that came about?
All right. Well, Blackwell it was built in the turn of the 20th century for a wealthy landowner. And it's part of the arts and crafts movement, which was, it's known as Art Nouveau in French, that period, Art Nouveau leading on to Art Deco in the 20s. And basically, the idea of the arts and crafts movement was things should be practical, but so they should also be beautiful. So they have things like even the little latches on the cupboards. They're all exquisite, and the risers that come up at the side of the fireplace to hold the lights. They're like trees with the branches coming off the top. And the windows, they're what's known as stone mullions. So instead of having wood for the cross pieces, you have stone, which are shaped like that. So the window on the lake cowl is the uprights and the cross members are the stone windows. There's a lot of stained glass in the building as well, and then it overlooks the lake. So the lake is shimmering beyond, and then you've got the stained glass at the bottom. But one of my testers did a sunset version with red. Oh my goodness, it was amazing, amazing! I just love that. In fact, somebody who's doing the shorts has on the bubble stitch on the legs. She's used highly variegated yarn, so there's like all these pops of color coming through it. I just love what the testers do with things. This shawl here, which is my see you later in Basque shawl, one of my testers did it in she did it in sort of what looked like uninspiring browns when she first showed me, but when it actually came out, it was stunning colours, and she was really pleased with it. And I actually had a man test that one for me, which was really exciting. I don't think enough men knit, do they really? I know you have your men
I
in shawls.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Like I meet so many men who knit that I feel like half of the knitting community are men, but that's probably
And they're all
my
left-handed.
window, right?
Yeah, yeah. So how did you meet David? Was that online as well?
Yeah, we've met on Instagram. So basically, um, I followed another David who is a crocheter, and he does these incredible things when he crochets really large dolly, and then he mounts it on canvas, and then he paints over it, and it
Wow.
turns into this like gorgeous art pieces. And so when I met David through like somebody else, he was a follower of somebody I followed, and then he posted it was a bunch of granny squares that he just like assembled on some board, and he was like, should I frame it somehow, should I turn it into anything? And I was like, you should see what this guy does. And that's how
Yeah,
our conversation started, and then we
yeah.
went from there.
You've really gelled, haven't you? He's such a character, David, isn't he?
He's very talented, and he has like, I mean, his imagination just has no limits. The
Yeah.
ideas that come to his head is just like every day there is some new ideas. He has more ideas than time to
Yeah.
need
Because
them.
you
And
started off originally, you had your snippets, didn't you, which were really funny. And there was it, did you say, they'll think we're mad? And he said, they'll think we're brilliant.
I know we sort of went from that to organizing Knitters Gonna Knit. And so now it
Yeah,
turned into like everyday snippet kind of thing, tidbits.
yeah. It's just been so popular, that really, hasn't it, as well?
I think it's the same idea that you mentioned about the loop, that we were trying to build the community. We were trying to organize this sense of, create this sense of family, of belonging. And the same thing as you said, that it's so hard for the new designer to break into the market and to make the name for themselves and to find testers and to find
Yeah,
this support. That was the reason behind Knitters Gonna Knit, because we like all the Facebook knitting groups have very stringent rules. They don't
they
allow
really do.
self-promotion.
Yeah, and they won't let you post your new designs, and they
Right.
take they delete your posts if you happen to mention that you actually designed it. It's that's not what it's about, really, is it?
And the Knitters Gonna Knit created this space where everybody could post what they work on. Everybody could ask for help, like to find
Yeah,
testers, to find new yarn dyers, and where yarn dyers could advertise and designers could advertise. So it's just like it creates this sense of community, but it helps everybody. It's not just helping one category of people. It's like it really
yeah,
helps all the yarn people to come
yeah.
together,
Yeah, rising tide raises all boats.
right? Yep.
But it is, and also it helps people to become real, because you can just be like this series of interviews, or you can just be a series of pictures and not actually showing your face, because it is actually quite hard to have the confidence to show yourself. And so it's important to be real in order to connect with people.
Right.
So they say in order to sell you have to know, like, and trust. And you have to you know, be yourself. I think there's some real quirky, interesting people out there. Genuine eccentrics. There's nothing as good as a genuine eccentric. I think David definitely falls into that category.
Right.
You never know what he's going to come up with next. One minute he's in a sort of Chinaman's hat, isn't he? Doing carding, and the next minute he's being all funky and sexy.
Right. Well, but that's the excitement of being a fiber artist, It's like you
It
don't
is.
necessarily have to be one thing or the other. You can be all of it.
Yeah, and even it is accessible to everybody, because you can go down a dollar store and pick up yarn. It's not something you have to spend a fortune on,
Right.
but it can bring the same comfort. It's accessible to everybody. And I know indie yarn is quite expensive, but quite often, if you are a designer, then you could ask to get on a yarn support program, because I when I first started looking, I saw these amazing yarns online, and they were Ronnie's. And I wrote to her and I said, these are so beautiful. I'm thinking of doing some designs. And she said, just, let's work together. And I couldn't believe that she'd said yes. So I
Right.
sent her some designs. And that's where my summer meadow top came out of. which I think she's taking it to a show. Actually, she's having it knitted up. And that so far is my best design, which I also haven't got here because I'm badly organized.
We'll put a picture of it.
Yeah, so she was happy to support me, and I think it's win-win for everybody when
Right.
and she has great faith in me as well. She's always telling me, that I'm, one day I'm going to be famous. So
She's
yeah,
wonderful. She has such a wonderful spirit.
yeah.
I really
But
like
she's very much a giver. She's a
she.
giver, a lovely lady. Yeah, so I'm really grateful for her. And also, I got yarn support from Madeline Tosh on my window on the lake, Cal. And this was from Julie Aslan in Canada, which is cashmere silk, and that's absolutely beautiful as well.
Love that color.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's sort of tweedy.
Yeah.
I don't move Flossie. She's a bit of an unstable girl. My husband found her. He was fishing and she was floating down the river.
Oh my God, that's a fun story.
So he brought her home. It's better than any fish he ever brought home.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed our chat and
Yes,
getting
I
to
did
know you
it.
better. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Oh, before I go, I did promise to say hello to Annalie, who wanted a wave. Hello, Annalie. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.